everyone, good evening. Welcome to the new episode of SEF Indisc Podcast, a podcast that can be your safe night soulmate. And for tonight's podcast, you will be with me, Sukma Kristanti, and I do really hope for our listeners outside that could be anywhere and anytime will always have the best day, the best time, and the best life. So, did you know that the next 2 days is World Water Day? Yeah, World Water Day is on 22nd of March, a day to remind us that water is our most precious resource, needed by every single living thing on Earth. So, what does water mean to you? Water could mean different things to different people, like how is water important to your home, your family life, your livelihood, your cultural practices, your well-being, your local environment? For example, in households, schools, and workplaces, water can mean health, hygiene, dignity, and productivity. In cultural, religious, and spiritual places, water can mean a connection with the creation, community, and oneself. Meanwhile, in natural spaces, water can mean peace, harmony, and preservation. But nowadays, water is under extreme threat from a growing population, increasing demands of agriculture and industry, and the worsening impacts of climate change. But actually, there's a thing that we haven't realized more about these little things which relate to the water because of the growing population all over the world. Could you guess? What is it? It's a microplastic. So, how could we or should think more about the connection between microplastic and water and the effect for us? Before that, we should know how actually microplastics are generated. The answer is the biggest one is from synthetic textiles and others like exterior plastic materials, wet wipes, the weathering, household plasticware, even our tea bags. Many of the fabrics are made from plastic, including polyester, nylon, acrylic, and polyamide. Even though we know sewage and wastewater treatment plants are primarily designed to treat waste, but we still do not have the capability to filter out most microplastics before being released into the environment. The next question is, how does it break up? So, when larger pieces of plastic waste are disposed of the environment, they get weathered and degraded. These larger pieces of plastic break down into smaller and smaller pieces and are eventually reduced to microplastics particles. And how can it get reduced? The reason is because as plastics spend more time in the water, it gets weakened by the waves and UV light from the sun, and eventually it breaks up into tiny pieces of plastic, or we can say it, microplastics. Then, where does it go? Like before, every time synthetic textiles are washed, tiny pieces of a plastic fabric break out, and up to many of them enter rivers, lakes, and the ocean. And also, for example, is our plastic water bottle. As this single-use water bottle is weathered and degraded, the plastic will break down into smaller pieces. And these small pieces are consumed by fish and other animals below water, which eventually impacts the entire food chain, including us. And how is it dangerous and why does it matter? So basically, plastic contains toxins, and because it's actually an absorbent material, it can also attract toxins to their surface, allowing it to carry harmful toxin on its surface, which can be fatal because this can be passed on to animals below water, ranging from the smallest invertebrate to the larger fish and mammals that eat them. And if we eat fish or seafood, we could be eating our own rubbish and toxin. And once it gets inside our body, it could transfer into our organs, even maybe our brain. And the possible effects of microplastic to our health are inflammation, cellular damage, and even more to the damage of our DNA. Finally, so what we can do or how we can help with this issue? First, we could say no to single-use plastic carrier bags, and then wash fleece and other synthetic fabric cloths, replace single-use plastics with reusables, buy in bulk, get bigger instead of several smaller, and put pressure on business, make your voice heard. I know it's still difficult for us to do so, even for me. But if there is a choice, we have to choose. Is it right? Because small choices become actions, actions become habits, and habits become our way of life, for the better us and for the better next generation. Okay, I think that's it for today's episode. Thank you for listening until the end, our beloved listeners of SEF Indisc Podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify to always stay updated about our next episode with another amazing announcer. SEF Indisc Podcast, a podcast that can be your safe night soulmate.